This video has been made possible by Paradox Interactive. Join thousands of your fellow Stellaris players on the official Stellaris Discord by using the link in the description below. Stellaris Console Edition is about to enter a bold new frontier in the 2.6 update, where a whole bunch of new features as well as quality of life options are going to be added to the game. And this is for every single player. Yes, it is in vanilla. However, there are a couple of features in there that are retroactively being added to existing expansions. Today we're going to be taking a look at 2.6, what it brings to the table, what you can expect, and how to use these new features and or quality of life improvements. There is quite a lot to go through, therefore I've added a useful little segment on the bottom of the video where you can navigate to wherever you want to go. If there is anything in particular that you want to know more of, feel free to click down in the timeline of the video. But without further ado, let's get started and take a look at the first very big addition to 2.6, the Origins system. Origins are powerful, new defining starting modifiers for your empire that will have far-reaching effects on how your game will take shape. In a sense, they're similar to the more advanced civics that you know and love, and actually some of them are some of the more advanced civics that were in the game before but have now been moved to Origins, where they make a lot more sense. Now, some of these are purely focused on mechanical changes, whether or not your empire works in a certain way or you have certain abilities, whereas others are more focused on story and role-playing. Now, in the game, you will be able to find the origins under the homeworld screen whilst creating a new empire. We can navigate into them right now. You get your name and class, your city appearance, and then finally your origin. Now, there is a reasonable amount of origins here already. We will go over them. If you have only the vanilla game, none of the expansions, you will get 3 out of the gate. First of all, there is Prosperous Unification. Now, Prosperous Unification gives you additional pops and additional districts at the start of the game, effectively boosting your economy into orbit. It is incredibly powerful and incredibly useful to have, as well, it does give you a massive advantage at the start of the game. Plus, having a larger homeworld means that you can have a larger population and a better specialization on said capital. Now, of course, you can always move your capital somewhere else at later down the line, but having a large planet at the start is incredibly helpful. Secondly, there is Galactic Doorstep. Now, Galactic Doorstep is more of a role-playing, story-orientated origin. What it does is it spawns a gateway within your home system and all sorts of events pop out. Essentially, your goal is to figure out what on earth is going on with this gateway and potentially do some really cool things with it. Galactic Doorstep allows you to really bring your empire together in the short run and allows you to expand in multiple unique directions, of course, once you've finished the chain for it. Then there is Lost Colony, the last and the third one of the vanilla origins. Effectively, what happens here is that somewhere in the galaxy, an empire will spawn that is advanced of your species. Effectively, the idea is that you are a lost colony, as the name already implies. Effectively, your species is from somewhere else, and maybe you can find the other species that you came from and rebind with them. However, that is not necessarily the case because their ethics could be completely different from yours. So some care is required there, as in fact they are an advanced version of your species. If you own Utopia, however, you will get additional bonuses from the expansion. Now, 2 of these, of the 3, were already in Utopia by itself. However, they've been reworked to work with the Origin system. One of them is, of course, Mechanist, one of the classics. Effectively, you get 8 robot pops at the start of the game. That will replace 8 of your normal pops, and on top of that you get a robot upkeep bonus, effectively allowing your technology to really get ahead, and you can use your robots to get insane amount of production. The problem here is that you need to be a little bit of materialist, and you cannot be a Gestalt consciousness, which is of course a feature from Utopia. Then there is Syncretic Evolution, another Utopia mechanic, where a civic was moved into the origin system. Basically what happens here is you get 12 additional pops in your empire that are of a subservient species. So if you are the kind of player that wants to min-max your species, having them have all sorts of cool bonuses and specializations and min-maxing and all that thing, Syncretic Evolution is the way to go. And of course, you can always turn them into prisoners with jobs, because who doesn't like to do that sort of thing? Finally, we have a brand new one here for Utopia as well. It's called Tree of Life. Now, Tree of Life is exclusive to hive mind species. Effectively, what it does is it will give you a brand new building modifier on your planet. It's not really a building, it's more of a district than anything else, or a planetary feature in that respect, and it is called the Tree of Life. The Tree of Life will give you all sorts of bonuses, and if you start a new colony, you have the option to seed a brand new sapling of said Tree of Life. And if you don't actually have a Tree of Life sapling on the side world, then you are going to run into serious penalties, and you need to be really careful of it. So what you want to do here is get Tree of Life and make sure that you don't lose it, because if anybody goes in and destroys your Tree of Life, you are in a lot of trouble. Then there is Apocalypse. 2 civics have migrated to Origins. They are, of course, life-seeded and post-apocalyptic. Life-seeded, well, you start with a size 25 Gaia world with a bunch of strategic resources, such as motes, gas, as well as crystals, and you can only live on Gaia worlds. It's a bit of a challenge, but, you know, having this being moved from civics means that you can use an additional civic slots for something else that is not life-seeded, because it is, in fact, now an Origin. Similarly, post-apocalyptics is where you start on a tomb world and you get the survivor trait, which means that you can live on tomb worlds. If you have any religious or spiritualist fallen empires nearby, probably not a good thing to do, but still it adds a nice challenge. And on top of that, because living on tomb worlds apparently increases your leader lifespan, because that makes sense. Finally, there is Synthetic Dawn, which adds a brand new little bonus here, which is called Resource Consolidation, where you start on a machine world. This is arguably one of the more powerful starts that is available in 2.6, because machine worlds are incredibly powerful at giving you no limits on how many districts you want to build. On top of that, you get a bunch of base resources on your capital world as well, which will blast you in the economic stratosphere. Incredibly powerful, incredibly good, and if you have Synthetic Dawn, I highly recommend trying it out. Now, you may have noticed that there is also Calamitous Birth. That is for lithoids. We're going to be talking about this in a separate video. However, lithoids gets their own origin, and I do hope that you're going to play with it. But like I said, that is for a separate video altogether. For those of you who have been playing Stellaris for quite some time and like to go really, really wide with their empires, you may have run into the issue of empire sprawl, effectively causing your empires to be constrained because you just don't want to have too much empire sprawl, which would then in turn increase the cost of running your economy. Thankfully, due to the brand new admin buildings that are being added, the issue of empire sprawl is no longer a problem. If you take a look here at our tooltip, you will see that we are getting administrative capacity from our pop jobs. Yes, pop jobs now generate the wonders of administrative capacity. Let's take a quick look here at our capital world at the brand new administrative offices building. Effectively, what it does is it adds 2 bureaucrat jobs, and we can take a look at what those bureaucrat jobs actually do. And there they are. Effectively, what they do is they generate a amount of empire sprawl, because the bureaucracy will need to grow for the ever-increasing requirements of the bureaucracy. In this particular case, 1 bureaucrat will generate 10 whole empire sprawl in this particular case, so be aware that you may not want to go too overboard on it, but no longer do you have to wait on technology or use traditions to increase your empire sprawl. This is a highly requested feature in the game, and it is definitely an amazing quality of life feature. And on top of that, it also has different tiers. As you can see right now, is I got an administrative office on my planet, but I can update it to an administrative park. park. The administrative park has an upkeep cost, though, of 1 crystals, and you can go even higher with an even higher upkeep cost, but it does add additional jobs. One administrative park adds 3 additional jobs on top of the administrative office already, and it is incredibly useful because no longer will you have to worry about the additional cost on technology, tradition adoption costs, or campaign costs, which is of course a huge deal. You're no longer bound to the galaxy's empire sprawl, just your neighbors. So expand at your leisure because administrative buildings are here for you. Whilst bureaucrats being added is a huge deal, something else is being added to Console Edition as well, and that is Planetary Designations. Now, Planetary Designations are fascinating in their approach as they will allow you to specialize your planets. And what do I mean by specializing your planets? Well, imagine any pop and then saying, okay, your pop job is cool, but we're going to give you a flat bonus on your output. And if you have an entire planet of those, that is going to rack up very quickly. Let's take a quick look here at our outliner and go to an interesting system called Hithram Prime. Now, as you can see here, Hithram Prime has a rather large amount of mining districts on it. And that means that it is the perfect world for mining as well as anything mining related. Not alloys, of course, because we want to use those with a Ecumenopolis, but we have a mineral purification hub as well as several robot assembly plants just to get the resource manufacturing going. However, let's say that we want to add a little bit of a bonus here. We can go into our summary screen and go to Planetary Status, where we can see how many bonuses we have. Right above that is the Planetary Designation. Now, it may not necessarily be clear that this is a button, but it most definitely is, because when we click on it, we are allowed to take a look at what sort of designations we can give our planets. Now, normally this is completely automated. You don't need to do this yourself if you don't want to. However, in some particular cases, when you have similar resources on the planet, let's say you have 3 consumer good factories and you have 3 alloy plants, then you may want to swap between either a forge world or an industrial world, depending on what you require at the time. In this case, however, we have a mining world, and basically what that means is that miner output will be increased by 20%. Now, 20% is a huge deal. It is basically on par with mining guilds. We can actually take a look at our empire setup in that regard. As we take a quick look here at our reformation and then take a look at our mining guilds. Yeah, we get +1 mineral from miners through the mining guild, which is a huge bonus. And on top of that, we have drone mining techniques, which adds another 10%. But yeah, if we take a look here at that mining world and we go to our planetary features and designations, having a +20% to miner output is absolutely massive, as it does tick up after a while. Having all these resources here is incredibly useful and definitely not something you want to ignore. Make sure that you go ahead and set your planet's designation early on. For instance, this is a bureaucratic center. Why is it a bureaucratic center? I do not know. There is only 1 bureaucracy building here, but there are 2 alloy plants. So instead of a bureaucracy center, we can just turn this into something else, like a forge world that will generate more alloys, because as everybody knows, alloys is what's keep the economy going. As the systems in Stellaris grows, it also means that we need new leader types. Yes, because, well, we need to be able to interact with our neighbors in a more effective way, and that's why Envoys now exist. If I quickly go over to one of my neighboring planets over here, and I take a look, just ignore the fact that I'm not using the menus right now because I prefer this myself. As you can see here, we can do improving our relations on this planet, and we can use our Envoys to do so. There's a lot of really powerful stuff that we can do with Envoys, and they are effectively your representative within the galaxy at large. They will not show up on the leader screen, sadly. They're currently just the governors, scientists, admirals, and generals, but they do exist. They don't get any traits, but they do die of old age, at which point they swiftly get replaced with a fresh body. It's a little bit annoying. There's no traits to them yet, but it's something that I'm looking forward to myself. Maybe in the future they'll get added too, because that makes perfect sense. Now, whilst you can use Envoys to influence your neighbors, and that's mainly where you're going to be using them for in the early game, once you've discovered enough empires on the map, something special will happen. You'll have the opportunity to form the Galactic Community. Now, this is applicable to any empire on the map. There's a chance that you can join the Galactic Community after it is already formed, when one AI has already met enough people, and they will form the Galactic Community. They can't have multiple Galactic Communities at once, because no, we cannot have two UNs at the same time, because that's effectively what this is, Space UN. We can find it on the left side of the screen on the menu bar with this purple galactic icon. Now, if we go in here, we will be Now, when we go in here, we will be given the following screen. Yes, we got 3 whole tabs of proposals, the Senate floor, and resolutions. Effectively, what you can do here is flex your diplomatic power to do resolutions, and effectively give yourselves even more modifiers throughout the game. There is tons of different modifiers that may or may not apply to you, so if you want to roleplay or min-max, there is something here for you. For instance, there is buzzword standardization, which increases trade value, but increases the upkeep for bureaucrats, so it's perfect for mega corporations. For instance, there are different ones, such as the wonders of politics and culture, and specifically the greater good, and very, very specifically greater than ourselves, objectively one of the best features of the Galactic Community. Essentially, what this does is once you've unlocked it, it unlocks an edict that allows every unemployed worker or simple drone to voluntarily move to wherever in your empire. That means that you will never have to manually resettle a pop ever again, and you can re-engineer them to make sure that they don't need those migration bonuses anymore. And also, it makes workers really, really happy, and on top of that, you will get a diplomatic weight from pops. Now, what is diplomatic weight, you ask? Well, diplomatic weight is a combination of your economic bonus, your fleet power, as well as the amount of population that you have. I have a separate video available that goes a little bit deeper in the mechanics behind that, but what it boils down to, in the early game, you will want to have as much economy as possible. Anyway, as we go into our proposals, effectively what happens here is that you can use your diplomatic power to suggest what we should vote on next, and basically say, hey, this little thing here, the Military Readiness Act, we support it or we oppose it. If you support it and everybody else, then it will be higher on the proposal queue, and the higher something is on the proposal queue, the sooner it will get voted for. In addition, this is also a place that we can use Envoys to assign them here. For instance, this guy is busy improving relationships. We don't want that, so we're going to assign them to the Galactic Community, which adds a 10% bonus to our diplomatic power. We always want to have as much diplomatic power as possible, because when a vote is coming in on the Senate floor, our diplomatic power is what is important. What we can do here, for instance, is we have our opponents and our supporters, and basically what happens here is that we can say we vote for this, and then the total tally of diplomatic power will be added in, and whoever has the highest number will in fact have the bonus for the thing. It basically means that the resolution will go through or that will not go through. And yes, you can accrue enough diplomatic power to in fact become the Senate. Add Palpatine jokes down in the comments below, please. Regardless, in addition, you can also leverage your favors that you have gotten from other empires to basically say, hey, I'd like you to vote for this, and I would like to use all my favors to use 100% of your voting power to vote on my stuff instead. Therefore, accruing those favors from other empires is very, very useful, because basically what happens there is that you can say, ha, you vote for my stuff because you owe me. And for those of you who are not aware, we can get the wonders of favors by offering trade deals, and then go into the favor tab and try to get favors. They are relatively expensive, but you will definitely have resources to buy them, because they are definitely worthwhile. In addition to that, you can also use Envoys for something else, and that is, of course, the new Federation system. Now, the new Federation system is rather curious because, well, It completely replaces the old Federation system. Effectively, the old Federation system was just a relatively shallow experience where you could hold hands with another empire, build a fleet, and that was effectively it. That system has been completely overhauled, as you will have the opportunity to get a Federation with another empire by getting the following. The tradition required here is, of course, diplomacy. If we go in here, then it is, of course, the Federation, which you will need in order to get a Federation. On top of that, you will get an additional Envoy, which is a nice little bonus. But on the left side of the screen, you will see that we also have the Federation as a little icon that we can go into. Effectively, it looks like this. It looks very similar to the Galactic Community in that regard. We can see how many members we have in our Federation, and everything is, of course, once again dictated through a political power. And yes, we can assign envoys to get political power in our Federation as well. But effectively, what happens here is that we can use our political power to steer the Federation in the direction that we want to go. This happens through the levels and the law system. Now, we'll touch on the levels first. The levels is basically the cohesion within the Federation. The more cohesion there is within the Federation, the faster this little bar on the screen will tick up, and once the bar is full, your Federation will gain a level. You will get more cohesion if you assign a envoy to the Federation itself. Everybody's currently in the Galactic Community because they're voting on something really important, but later on we can just move them back to increase cohesion. Yes, you can move envoys back and forth without much problems, but regardless, every single one will allow us to get a new level. Levels give us unique bonuses. One will apply to the Federation leader, more about that shortly, and the other ones will apply to everybody else. So for instance, at level 2 here, you will see that new members will impose a smaller cohesion penalty, which means that the Federation will grow quicker. And also the President will get an additional envoy, which can get out of control really quickly. On top of that, there's naval capacity bonuses, etc. In addition to that, we can also enact laws. Now, some laws are only available to certain levels of cohesion. For instance, unless we have a level 4 Federation, we cannot have a high level of Federation centralization. And basically what that means is that we can enact more laws. The higher the centralization, the crazier the laws that we can have. For instance, fleet contribution. We have several laws that basically say, hey, you will now transfer a percentage, a higher percentage even, of your naval capacity to the Federation. So, for instance, at level 4, you can force the Federation members to transfer 30% of their naval capacity to the Federation, and those are effectively free for upkeep purposes, which is incredibly good and very, very powerful. And once again, you can play a mini dictator here as well by changing the succession term rates and then turning the succession type over towards the strongest, because in this particular case you are the strongest and you will always be the president. And then it's time to dictate your rules, and effectively you become a mini hegemony, and you can take it from there. Of course, fleet contribution is really important as well because it allows members of the Federation to build ships, and once you have ships, you can build a massive fleet and crush your opponents underneath your hooves. Yes, there's a lot of really cool stuff to be had here in the Federation system, and of course you also have your Federation fleet designer. You can leave your Federation if you want to. You can rename the Federation at the drop of a hat and have fun with that. In this particular case, there's 2 federations within the galaxy, which is potentially a problem because we will most likely go to war sooner or later, but we will see. The Khan hasn't woken up yet, so that is still something exciting to be had. Now, there is one final new feature that has been added to the 2.6 update, and that is Relics. Yes, the Relic system is coming to 2.6, and effectively what it does is it will leave a smattering of special events all over the map, which allows you to find little relics, and every single relic will give you additional bonuses. You can find them under the technology screen here. So you can see we don't actually have any relics ourselves, but you can definitely find them in space, and some of them are locked behind certain expansions, so more bonuses for you there. And effectively it allows you to get additional bonuses from various things. And this can turn into all sorts of things, such as finding the throne of the Khan floating in space. And you can do all sorts of cool stuff with that. There is an activation cost. It does cost influence, so you want to be careful with that. And yeah, the relic system is a little bit bare bones at the moment, but I'm sure we will see new stuff popping up in for that in the future. Finally, there has one thing been added to the outliner. If we scroll all the way to the bottom, we will see that research is now added to the outliner as well, where we can see that yes, research is being researched very happily and very frequently. So yeah, there is the 2.6 update. If you want to see more about the origins, what they do and how they function, feel free to go and check out the playlist regarding the origins. There's quite a lot of them, and sadly we don't have time to squeeze them all into one video. But hey, if you want to learn more, head over towards the playlist as well. I want to thank Paradox Interactive for making this video possible. We're gonna go wrap it up here. Thank you to my patrons, and until next time, 2.6 is coming. Are you ready to become the Senate?